ball's out. Ball is loose. It is scooped. Richardson's going to return it. Touchdown, Aggies. Damani Richardson.
A little pitch play to the near side. Past the 20, inside the 10. Lunging for the end zone. Touchdown. Anais Smith, what a run.
Wigman again to the air. One-hand grab, Evan Stewart. Freshman to freshman and a 15-yard strike.
Thanks for checking back with us once again here on the R-Lads Football Network, the OFN today, as we talk some college football. We're still in July, and we're talking college football for the 2023 season. That's because it's July 31st. And our very first team interview is going to be Olin Buchanan from TexAgs.com. You can check out the URL there on the ticker. You can also check out some of the links that we're going to provide for you in the description area. Olin, it's good to talk Texas A&M football with you again.
Hey, you know what? There's never a bad time to talk about college football, and especially Texas A&M football.
Oh, okay. And maybe this year too, especially after what happened last year. It's a disappointing season for the football program last year.
Yeah, it was. They had a whole lot of issues, but even their injuries and their youth and all those things doesn't make what's the word I want to look for. You know, it doesn't excuse losing to Appalachian State and some of those performances by the offense. So there's been a lot of additions, a lot of reasons to think they're going to be better, not the least of which is Bobby Petrino coming over to run the offense.
Yeah, that was definitely going to be one of the topics. How did the fans take to that?
First, it was curiosity. Like, are you sure? But of course, you know, but I don't think anyone ever questions Bobby Petrino's track record of offense, right? It's more of the off the field issues that are so famous, right? But then you think about it, and the SEC West is division of forgiveness when you look at some of the issues that Lane Kiffin had earlier in his career, that Hugh Freeze has had in his career, Brian Kelly has had in his career. So it's the division of forgiveness. So he's paid his penance. He's at Texas A&M. There's a lot of excitement now that the fans had some time to kind of mull it over and think about what he's done in his career. Especially they look at what he did at Arkansas with. I imagine if you looked at it objectively, a good but not great group of receivers, and probably better receivers he has this year at A&M than maybe he ever had at Arkansas. So there's some excitement of the possibilities that Bobby Petrino could bring with the skill talent that's on hand at A&M.
And of course, he is the coordinator, so it's not like he brings certain amount of, say, baggage as a head coach. The coordinator job, the assistant job, it's a lot easier for fans to, or even maybe some of the media to kind of just, okay, all right, you know, it's talked about, but he's not the head coach. So, but yeah, that kind of reputation, you would think that would be only a plus. And when I take a look at the offense, and the overall team seemed to be quite young last season.
Yes.
And so a lot of that youth, the good part is they got the experience, and now some of that experience has got to turn into some W's this year. But on offense, it seems to me that it's really all going to depend and I'm not saying it happens all the time, but we know how important the quarterback position is in football. It just seems that the A&M has enough talent on offense that if they get good quarterback play, they should really have one of the better offenses in the SEC. But will they get that quarterback play?
Good question, because every quarterback's got to have protection, and that was an issue at times for A&M last year. However, what we saw in a small sample size from Connor Wigman, who was a true freshman last year, got thrust into the starting lineup because of injuries to Haynes King, who's now at Georgia Tech, and Max Johnson, who, by the way, is still competing for that starting job. A guy like me just thinks it's going to be Connor Wigman, though Jimbo Fisher says it's an open competition. It's going to go all the way through.
Hey, why not? I like Max Johnson. I think he's got good potential, Johnson.
I didn't like him on a last pass he threw for LSU because it beat A&M.
Yeah.
But But he actually started 3 games before he got hurt and looked pretty good. But Connor Wigman came on, and he played really well. And Ole Miss, he threw for 300-plus yards. I think it was 4 touchdowns. Did not put up the huge numbers against LSU in that upset win, but he threw a couple of touchdown passes and scrambled a few times to extend drives. And that's something that we hadn't seen a lot from A&M for a while. So he looked good. And one of the things that gives you some reason to be a little more optimistic about A&M than maybe in the past was we were always told the quarterbacks were really good, but hadn't had a chance to see them. I'm talking about Haynes King.
Okay, correct.
Zach Calzada, Jimbo Petrino said, hey, practices are closed, but man, these guys are NFL type, any NFL style
yeah, I know.
quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then we say, okay, but we haven't seen it. And then when we see them play, you're like, all right, well, they're not showing it, even though Zach did show it in one game against Alabama back in 21.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
This is one game. With Connor, we saw him come out and actually do it, actually play well against Ole Miss, actually play well against LSU. So when you've seen it with your own eyes, you can say, okay, I think they have something here.
And that really, the good news is, even if he does win the job, having a number 2 like Max Johnson, you have to believe that is as good as a number 2 quarterback that you can think of having. So injury-wise, that would be a really good position for them to be in. So looking overall at the offense, and again, I said that it looks to me on paper that, especially the skill positions, all the recruiting that's been going on the last couple of years, if they stay healthy, they should be really good there, especially at wide receiver. I mean, Evan Stewart had a heck of a first year, and now who knows what he can do after playing as good as he did as a freshman. And this was another, you talk about the quarterback position, this was a receiver that was also talked up last spring, but he delivered.
He delivered.
So
All-American.
Yes.
Ainias Smith has been, in my opinion, and I don't think it's a biased opinion, I think he's been one of the better, though maybe underappreciated slot receivers in the SEC. But he got hurt, trying to deliver a downfield block against Arkansas last year. Only played 4 games.
Yeah.
Well, that was bad news. The good news is, because of that, he decided to come back for a super senior season, and so they have him coming back. He's been productive in big games. He's had 4 touchdown catches against Alabama in his career. Moose Muhammad came on when Ainias Smith got hurt, and he really distinguished himself. So, and then they have a guy that you haven't seen a lot of, a 6'6", 200-pound guy, Noah Thomas, that they're just raving about. So we'll see again if it's all talk. But he played a little bit last year and did okay. But the word is that he's made significant strides forward and really turned some heads in the spring and since. So we'll see about that. But potentially, and that's the problem with A&M. Sometimes we have to say potentially too often.
Uh-huh.
Potentially, I think I'm not going to say their group of receivers are going to be the best in the SEC, but I will say they're going to be as good as any.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then you take a look at the tight end position. What do you think about Donovan Green's ceiling? He had a pretty decent first year, highly considered recruit. So do you expect him to another guy that's going to make a bump? Do you think he's got that type of potential?
Yeah, I think he did really well from a receiving standpoint as a tight end. I don't have his numbers right in front of me, but about 20 to 25 catches, probably 200-300 yards, and a couple of touchdowns. I know he had a touchdown against LSU. I know he had one against Alabama. Those games kind of stand out, right?
Of course.
But what he needs to do is, and he's gotten bigger, but he's got to improve himself as a blocker. They also have Jake Johnson, who was a highly touted recruit when he got here. Max's younger brother, big old kid that was injured most of last year.
Okay.
And got in late. So they think they really have two emerging players at tight end that they think are going to be really great, not just good, but great players for them. But they actually returned their starter in Max Wright, who's a senior. I don't think he's as talented as those two, but he's more experienced. But I do think you'll see a whole lot of Donovan Green and Jake Johnson. And they love to use the tight ends, and Bobby Petrino likes to use the tight end.
Okay.
So, I think you'll see a lot of that with those guys this year.
The top running back is gone, but there sure is a ton of talent coming back.
Man, and, I think there was a whole bunch of Aggies. In fact, I know there was. In fact, all Aggies were hoping that maybe Devon Achane would decide to come back here and see if he could boost his draft status, but knew that was not just a pipe dream, but maybe a crack pipe dream. But he was a third-round pick of the Dolphins, and that leaves a gaping hole. However, Maury Daniels came in for Devon against LSU, and they didn't miss a beat. He had like a 24-yard run, 23 maybe, a 12-yard run. He got in there, only had 4 carries, but he ran the ball well. Le'Veon Moss, kid that got out of Louisiana, Walker, Louisiana, they really love him. And we didn't see a whole lot of him last year. Why would you see when you got Devon Achane, right? Yeah. But he's a big 220-pound kid, runs hard, runs strong. Jimbo Fisher has really raved about him. So we'll see, because again, the sample size is so small. I think Le'Veon had like 114 yards rushing last year, and Amari Daniels had about 150 in backup roles. And then there's the 5-star kid, Ruben Owens, for what that's worth. He was either, depending on which recruiting service you want to follow, he was either the number 1 or number 2 running back prospect in the country.
Yes.
So, it hurts to lose Devon Achane, but at least they can look at what they have and say, okay, I think we got some material to work with.
Did you happen to notice anybody specifically offensively during the spring, or you just didn't take too much into that?
Once again, Jimbo, he should be in charge of guarding state secret, right?
He's got the Bill Belichick way of.
We got into the spring game, and of course they made sure they weren't going to show anything. And as I recall, Ruben Owens had a nice run. Lamar Daniels had a nice run. But then you say, well, is that because they're really good? Or is that run defense? I'm sure you'll get to it.
Yeah.
Was a big problem last year. It's still a problem. So we'll find out on all those things. But sure. I think they looked at what they saw at that position and say, it's not Devon Achane. Hey, Devon Achane, you can make an argument, was the best running back ever here. So you don't expect these guys to come in and be as good as Devon, but you just hope that the decline isn't too great. You're stepping off a curve instead of stepping off a cliff.
I doubt that. That's a lot of talent. So, but they have to find room to run. And there were a considerable amount, not only of youth, but injuries on the offensive line. So with them being more experienced and hopefully healthier, that's why I said, I would anticipate the offensive line not being an issue, but they still have to prove themselves.
They do. And I thought that they got better around, in the second half of the year. They put freshman Cam Dewberry at left guard.
Okay.
And I thought he made them better. They missed terribly. And Cam Dewberry started because 2 guys in front of him got hurt. So he was down to third string and, ended up making them better. He just wasn't ready. He was a true freshman, right? They had to get him ready. But they got worse as an offensive line right after the loss to Alabama. Bryce Foster, their center, who I think could be an all-SEC guy if he stays healthy. He got hurt, torn ACL in that game, still played through it to the end of the game, which was pretty remarkable. And, he missed the spring and things like that. But a guy like that, you know what he can do. So I think when you start and say, all right, Dewberry is now experienced and gotten bigger over a year. And then you have Bryce Foster coming back from injury. Trey Zoon, left tackle. He played hurt all year. Started 11 games, but he was hurt all year. The right side are guys you expected to be the strength of your offensive line. Reuben Father at the right tackle and Leighton Robinson at right guard. frankly, they didn't play as well as they should have. They
Okay.
did not play as well as they did in 2021. So both of them have to raise their game.
Okay. Let's talk about the defense then. And all right, let's start off with is the run defense, is that the biggest question?
Yeah, I think it has to be. A&M was one of the worst in the country against the run. I don't know if you saw the Ole Miss game, but then Ole Miss was just running up and down the field on them. There are a lot of course, that was Quinshawn Judkins, but still, there were other running backs that had so much success against A&M. And, again, you don't want to make excuses, but you do have some explanations. McKinley Jackson missed a lot of the year. I think he's an NFL defensive tackle.
Absolutely.
He missed about half the year, 4 games completely, and then some games hurt and came out early. Fidel Diggs, their best defensive end, missed about four games, most of another one. And that left them playing an awful lot of true freshmen. Now, you might remember, I'm sure you do, that their 2022 recruiting class was considered number 1 in the country. And a big part of that was because of all the defensive linemen they got in that were highly regarded. However, I don't care how good you are, you're still an 18-year-old kid in a grown man's league.
Yes.
And you're going against guys who've been in the SEC for 2 and 3 years, and they were big-time recruits themselves. So they showed flashes of brilliance. A guy like Walter Nolan came in, showed flashes. A guy like L.T. Overton or Shamar Stewart, you would see some things. They'd do some things. You say, hey, man, you got something here. But you didn't have the consistency because, quite frankly, they were boys playing against men. Well, you like to think that they've grown up some physically and mentally. You had linebackers that, quite frankly, didn't play very well.
Okay.
And did not show a lot of instincts. But they were both first-year starters, Chris Russell and Edgerrin Cooper. Now, Edgerrin Cooper played before, but he's never been a starter before. So does that mean a year's experience that they'll be better? You think so. You'd like to think that, hey, okay, you had the first year to get your feet wet and really understand what it means to be in that position, but now got that whole year's of experience as a starter. Can you be better this year? You'd like to think that's the case. But they got to prove it. And if they don't, they brought in a kid, J.D. Davis from Jackson State. I think with what they have in the defensive line, if I can find some linebackers, just have good linebacker instincts, that understand where the hole is, where the cutback is, not overrunning plays, not running into the traffic instead of the hole. If they can get better there, then I think they can make some big leaps quickly in their run defense.
And have you heard anything yet from Hicks? Because he was maybe one of the top, if not the top recruit overall, right? The defensive lineman. Where does he fit? Is he more of an interior guy, Hicks?
Yeah, he's an interior guy, and he's going to play. And that's one of the things that they're really excited about. We got a guy like David Hicks coming in that a couple of years ago you would have said, okay, he's going to come in and start from day one because he's better than everybody.
Yeah.
Now you don't have to do that necessarily. Yeah. He'll start if he's the best guy. But, you got McKinley Jackson. You got Isaiah Rakes, who's been a productive player. You've got Shamar Turner, who's a guy that was a 5-star guy that came in and played pretty well last year. And they're talking about him having that breakout season, perhaps. Walter Nolan, you have those kind of guys. So if David Hicks gets into the starting lineup, look, he's going to play. He's too good not to play.
Yeah.
But if he gets into the starting lineup, it's going to be because he's just so good that you can't keep him out.
By the way, the word breakouts, keep an eye on, or keep an ear on that. Keep an ear on that, because we're going to talk about breakthrough players, predictions on breakout players in a little bit, and then wrap up the secondary. So the secondary has an influx, and this is another thing I wanted to talk about overall, transfers. But because if there's any position that had more key transfers, probably the secondary, correct?
Yeah, Tony Grimes from North Carolina. They had Sam McCall come in from Florida State. They had a guy coming from Boston College. They needed some help in the secondary. Jalen Jones and Antonio Johnson decided to go into the NFL draft early. Knew that they would need some new start, plus they needed depth. And so they addressed it. Quite frankly, And, some might say you're looking through maroon-colored glasses, and I might be. But quite frankly, I think their secondary was number one in the country against the pass last year. But let's be honest, a lot of that was because, hey, why pass?
Yeah.
Against them, right?
Yeah.
So that's true. You gotta take into that consideration. But I think they were pretty good in the secondary last year, and quite frankly, I think they can be as good, if not better. I think I don't necessarily think they're going to lose anything with kid coming from North Carolina, Grimes, to replace Jalen Jones. You still have Tyreek Chappelle, who's going to be a third-year starter at the corner. And remember the name Bryce Anderson. As he played an awful lot last year as a backup to Antonio Johnson, nickel, and I think it was really impressive. So I think he can be, maybe not this year, better than Antonio Johnson in the long run. I mean, really high on that guy. And they're safety for both back. Damani Richardson decided to come back for a super senior season.
Yes.
That was I don't know that Aggies should ask for too much more for Christmas. When you get a guy like that, decide he's going to give you another season. So they get him and Jardine Gilbert back at starting safety. So they got to feel pretty good there.
Okay. And then one more, then we'll go over some of those other questions, and that's to break the the special teams unit, 12th man. It's always important, Texas A&M, but they struggled a bit last year in the kicking game. So, and overall special teams. So what do you think about this year? Competition or same guys?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be some competition. They're punters. Nick Constantino's going to punt. He's been here, it seems like forever. Australian kid that I think he didn't have as good a year last year as he had the previous year, but he's a good punter. And they love to have him. Randy Bond came in as the kicker last year. Was not supposed to be the kicker, but the guy they had a chance to win or at least force overtime, and that lost to Appalachian State and just shanked it as bad as you could shank one. And they went to Randy, and he made, I want to say, again, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. I want to say he made like 10 of 12 kicks. Maybe it was 8 or 12. One of them was blocked, and the guy was way offsides. Okay, you can go back and look at it against Mississippi State. And missed one from 50-plus against Arkansas, and then missed 2 in a deluge against UMass. But that was accurate. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to tell you he has that big leg that every time you line up for 50, that you just feel like, okay, this is a layup for him. Okay. But he was very reliable inside 40, and I think they'll take that. So they feel good about him. Anaya Smith coming back. You got him returning kicks.
That's right.
He was really good on punts before he got hurt. I don't know necessarily who'll return kickoffs, but they got so many guys. Maybe Moose Muhammad could be your number one guy there. And then, of course, what you were referring to is what they have to do a lot better is in coverage.
Yes.
They gave up a touchdown on the opening kickoff against South Carolina, and everything went downhill from there.
All right. Transfers. We talked about some of them in the secondary. Give us a couple more key guys to keep an eye on.
Well, I mentioned J.D. Davis, the guy from Jackson State. Linebacker play has to get better. And here's a guy that played well at a different level. That doesn't mean he can't play well in the SEC, but we're going to have to see it. So I think that's really important. I'm trying to think of.
Was that Deion's team?
Yes.
He was on Deion's team. Okay.
Yeah. And it's kind of the situation where a lot of their transfers were for depth. So
okay.
Got back from Boston College. Well, I don't think they're looking at him to necessarily be the starter. Brought in a guy to be a fullback, to back up fullback. So backup offensive lineman. So I think the main guys that they brought in as transfers are the guys we talked about. When you have if you're being really strict about how you're going to define a starter, you got 8 offensive and 8 defensive starters coming back. So you didn't have a huge need for guys to transfer portal. But Tony Grimes, J.D. Davis, Sam McCall, a kid named DeBerry.
The kid from BC. Yep.
I think those 4 guys came in at the positions where you needed to look at a starter and some depth. So I think those are the guys that they brought in that really address needs more than just bolstering some things.
Did they lose anybody important?
Well, yeah. I mean, Tumisi Adilier is a guy that went to defensive end from Michigan State. He's going to Michigan State, and they liked him. They would love to keep him, but again, that's at a position where if you can absorb a loss, that's where they would have loved to have kept Anthony Lucas, who's a 5-star kid from Arizona who decided to transfer to USC. But once again, they're loaded in the defensive line, so they'd love to keep him. Don't get me wrong, because he's a good player. He did some good things last year, got in a little bit of trouble, but it wasn't anything that couldn't have been forgiven. So they'd love to keep him. But for the most part, and I know you heard about tons of guys transferring out, most of them were guys that weren't going to play. So they're looking for a chance to play. Now, they would have loved to keep Denver Harris, a cornerback who's now at LSU. Would have loved to keep him. But Denver had a lot of off-field issues, and it felt like it was best to part ways. The same with the kid Chris Marshall, who transferred to Ole Miss and has since left that program. So they've had 3 of their guys who transferred out to other programs that have already left those programs.
Wow. Okay.
So there was some feelings that there were some guys on the team last year that maybe created more headaches than you needed, and I feel like that was part of the exodus.
Okay.
And so there may be at least a measure of addition by subtraction, even though those guys were really talented players.
And that's what happens when you have the number 1 recruiting class and you have recruited as well as you have recently. There's just so many spots, and the kids get there, and then they realize, well, I'm not going to necessarily get as many reps as I thought I was going to get. Okay, now in this day and age, this makes it easier for me to transfer. So,
well, we also had an incident where like 4 players sneaked out of the team hotel to go to a party down at Prairie View A&M, which is about 40 to 50 miles from us.
Oh,
and then there was another incident where 4 guys were, let's just say they were engaged in something they should not have been in the locker room at South Carolina, and they had to discipline those guys, and all those guys have left.
Okay, that's the other thing. You know, you do have to wonder about. It's great to get all the 5 and 4 stars, but you got to get the right kids. And
I think you can look at any program, and you're going to see guys, even the 4 and 5-star guys that come in, and everybody has some attrition. Again, like I said, one of the 5-star kids they brought in went to Ole Miss, and now he's no longer at Ole Miss.
Sure.
Another kid, 4-star guy, went to Georgia. He's no longer at Georgia. One kid went to Houston. He's no longer. So, sometimes you take a chance on a guy, and sometimes it works out, and sometimes it doesn't.
All right, breakout players. You've kind of teased us a little bit on some of them. So who's a good breakout offensive player this year?
Breakout offensive player. Well, I'm telling you, I got to see it. But from what everybody in that program tells us, from Jimbo Fisher, not assistant coaches because they don't talk to us, but players that we get an opportunity, they keep talking about this kid, Noah Thomas. Noah Thomas this, Noah Thomas that.
Okay.
Like I said, 6'6", about 210, maybe bigger than that. And he's just been the talk of the whole offseason from the offensive standpoint. Now, you could say Connor Wegman, has he broken out yet? No, he showed splashes, but that you could say him.
Okay.
But if you were looking for somebody other than the obvious, the one that really stands out is Noah Thomas. And, maybe even Jake Johnson. I'm telling you, they love Jake Johnson. But the guy that you hear the most talk about from the offensive side that is Noah Thomas. They say, hey, he makes the 50-50 ball into an 80-20 ball.
Okay. Sounds good. And then defense.
Well, I mentioned Shamar Turner. And Shamar Turner's been a good player I think he's from DeSoto, Texas. Came here as a 5-star guy. Has played well, but they're looking for him to take that step from being a good player to a dominant one.
Okay.
And there are so many guys, that you got to compete with. So in theory, that's got to make you better because if you're not beating them out in practice, if you're going to keep Walter Nolan on the sideline even for a little while, you better be playing at a high level. But they love what they see from him. I think it could be Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan showed flashes of really good things last year. It could be Mar Stewart. He showed flashes. You're just wondering which one of those guys in the defensive line are going to go from, hey, he's really talented and he's got great potential, to being, he's a real productive guy. And, you can go down the list. There's a guy named Malik Sela that was more of a speed rusher, and he came in and did some really good things. Maybe it's J.D. Davis at linebacker, who I don't know if you're a transfer that's played 3 or 4 years elsewhere, if you can be a breakout guy, but if he can come in and play a good solid linebacker, that can make a real difference. But if you're looking for guys that could come out and be star caliber, challenge for all SEC honors, I think you'd go with all those defensive linemen: Walter Nolan, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, guys like that.
Okay. Yeah, because like you said, I mean, at some point too, you have to.
And I'll tell you what, I'm sorry. The first guy I should have mentioned, I've talked about him a lot earlier, is Bryce Anderson. Jot down.
I've already circled his name. Yes.
Circle the name Bryce Anderson. That guy's a heck of a football player.
But you said it may not be this year, but before he leaves.
Well, he's going to be good this year.
Yeah.
He's going to be good this year. But before he leaves, he could be great.
Okay. I'll hold you to that. And let's go. There's one more player I should bring up, because Dave Syverson, who's the lead scout at our lads, I asked him, are there any players that I should ask about, or guys that you're interested in that could be day 2, day 3, college free agent type talented players, under the radar type guys? And the one name that we haven't talked about, no big surprise because he's offensive lineman, he says is Leighton Robinson.
Okay, Leighton, this time last year, I think that Kuiper guy had him as the number 1 interior offensive lineman.
Wow, okay.
Well, Leighton didn't have the kind of year he expected.
Yeah.
Now, he didn't have any injuries that kept him out of games, but he was just those nagging injuries. Now, Leighton is the type of guy that if you put him across from this guy, I don't care who he is, and say, you block that guy, he's going to block you. But when they start twisting and turning and blitzing and things like that, last year there was all kinds of issues with communication. Now,
okay.
Are they going to get they were also in their first year with Steve Adazio as their offensive line coach. Now, in the second year, are they going to get all that communication figured out? Maybe they got it figured out last year. It just took them too long. If you'll remember against LSU, they were running the ball, moving the ball up and down the field against a pretty good defense. Then the question is, why did it take so long?
Sure.
Right? So if they get everything, that communication gap figured out, Leighton, I mean, he's a big, like they all are, but he's just a big, agile, strong guy that, you can go watch him a play against LSU. We were watching just the other day. And when he pulls from going left, he's so good as a pulling guard that you saw like Devon A-Chain break off big runs. Well, it got to where against LSU when he started to pull, everybody went the linebackers were like keying on him. Oh, Leighton Robinson's pulling, let's follow him. And then they were just running the opposite way because they knew A-Chain could outrun everybody else, right? So, and it was, I don't know that I guarantee you they don't have the same speed without A-Chain, but and they'll probably still do that because when you see, as a defense, you see Leighton Robinson moving, you have to acknowledge that he's probably going to lead the way because he can knock people down.
So sort of like the team in general is that expected more, a little bit disappointing, but watch out this year. Now maybe this is the year.
Well, it could be. Now, here's the deal. We hear that a lot at Texas A&M. Oh, this is the year. This is the year. We were 2022 or 2020. Hey, this was the year, and then COVID happened. They had a big year, but a lot of people just don't want to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Even though they went 9-1 against an All SEC schedule.
Yeah.
Right. And then we thought 2021 might be a big year because we heard about how good Haynes King was. Then he got hurt early in the second game. So you're down to your backup quarterback, and you had some great moments, but had some moments that just looked like, what are they doing type of thing. But now you had that, you guys follow college football. You know what I'm talking about. You had that recruiting class. Well, now the last year, most of your talent, I'd say 80% of your talent, were freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah.
Well, now they're sophomores and juniors.
That's right.
I think it makes a big difference. Now, they're going to have to prove it does, but I think typically that makes a big difference. So let's see if those young guys who are so talented, if they've grown up and maybe, physically they're not just talented, but able to match up with those other talented guys that you're playing against in the SEC. I think they have a better chance to be more consistent as sophomores and juniors than they did as freshmen and sophomores.
Yeah, because barring any major injury type season again, this just seems too talented to not be, all right, well, we should at least be definitely a bowl team. We should, I would suspect the expectations are, well, we should at least be challenging as well, pretty deep into the season. All right, if it doesn't work out, if they don't win, don't even play an SEC championship game, maybe it's not the end of the year and the end of the world, but it's progress. But anything short of all that, and then there's some questions that have to be taken because it's just too talented, the team, for them to have another type of year record-wise that they had last year.
Yeah, they're talented, they're more experienced, but quite frankly, they need to win.
Yeah.
And they need to win big because, quite frankly, you didn't make the investment, not just in coaches, but in the programs to have the kind of season that you had last year. Now, you could say, okay, right, it was one of those years. They played Florida, but along with all the injuries, they had a flu outbreak that game. They had something like 8 starters that couldn't play because of the flu, including Connor Wigman. It was one issue after another last year. So sometimes you just say, you know what, that was one of those years that we didn't see coming. But they were also very young. They had 34 players that missed multiple games with injuries, 2 or more. That's kind of crazy. But again, that doesn't excuse what happened against Appalachian State and some of the other games. So to his credit, Jimbo Fisher realized that, that he needed to make some changes, starting with himself. You saw him last year. He'd be like this, trying to figure out, okay, what play am I going to call here? While I got to yell at the officials.
Yeah.
And now I got to try to figure out a play. And now I got to get the right personnel in. And, hey, what do you know? We had a delayed game penalty.
Yeah.
You ran into that way too long.
Yeah.
And he finally said, you know what? I need to get somebody else in here. Brings in Bobby Petrino, great track record, somebody he can respect because they're contemporaries. And, the hope is that's going to make a big difference. If you could add one touchdown to every game, and I know it's easier said than done, but if you could have added one touchdown to every game last year, A&M goes 10-2.
That's we got to look at it because it's the truth.
And you're 2 yards away from beating LSU and Alabama in the same season.
Yeah, maybe
you're not that far away.
Well, it looks like it, and these teams and these seasons they happen because they have the talent to be better than maybe some people think. I'm not even sure. I haven't even started looking at the odds to win the championship. So I have no idea how respected or disrespected they are, but they have the talent, and they're definitely a team to keep an eye on, no question about it. So, because there's only a certain number of teams that can really win the national championship, and I'm not saying it's, I'm not going to try to go 30, 40 teams, of course, but if you said about 20, 25 teams, I think nowadays it's more realistic. I think the days of, and Georgia kind of maybe trying to disprove that, but I don't know. I'm starting to think nowadays with the transfer portal, the domination of the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Clemsons, I'm not so sure we're going to be seeing a whole lot of that anymore. It's too tough.
Well, I would hope you're right. Let's say,
yeah.
But the
playoffs are coming too. So
and I think A&M would just what they need to do is aim for the playoffs and see what happens there, right? But when you look at A&M and kind of figure out or try to project a record, you can't say, okay, we're going to win it in Baton Rouge because they haven't won there since 1994. Yeah. Hell, I didn't have gray hair the last time I won there. But I'll say this: I think when you look at what other teams are dealing with on their schedule, A&M has their warts. Other people have more. Other teams do. I don't know that you can ever ask for a better opportunity than this year. I mean, when are you going to get Alabama with more questions than you do now? I mean, I'm not saying that Alabama is going to be struggling by any means.
Sure.
But when are you going to get an Alabama with trying to figure out who their quarterback is? Right? When are you going to get Alabama that had some defensive issues and new coordinators and things like that, and you get them at home, right?
Yes.
How long is Auburn going to be down? Right?
True.
You had a chance to beat Auburn last year and you didn't take advantage of it. Now they got a first-year coach with some good defensive players, and Tank Bigsby has moved on to the NFL. When are you going to get Auburn in a situation like this? Now you got to take advantage of the situation. But so you look at the other teams and the warts they have, and you say, there's an opportunity here, but are you going to be able to take it? And quite frankly, A&M has been inconsistent. But maybe the good part of this is that I don't know that there's a lot of expectations.
Yeah, there you go.
And A&M historically overachieves or achieves when there's not a lot of expectation. When they got that stealth fighter quality, that's usually when they've done well, like 2020 or 2012. When no one's thinking, they're not ranked high. Last year they started the year ranked number 6. So maybe without the great expectations, maybe that'll factor in their favor as well.
Yeah. Again, starts a quarterback. So if they get the quarterback play, then I think and health, I think they're going to definitely be a contender. By the way, that Miami game could be their toughest road game if Miami is improved as we would think they would be in year 2. That they have a very good coaching staff, and I think they are going to turn things around there. So that could be because that's not a game that you can afford to lose after what happened last year and coming into this year, a brand new season, because schedule wise, if you take care of business with Miami, the team could very well, or at least you would expect them to, if they're a good team, to be 5-0 when they host Alabama.
I think the possibility is there, right? You as bad as things were last year, you beat Arkansas, and you got Arkansas before Alabama. As bad as things were last year, you beat Miami, and you got Miami, and then Auburn, which you did lose that game, but you got them coming here. And again, I talked about the subtractions that they had on their defense. Excuse me. So thank you so much. So I think I'll put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not a odds maker, but I wouldn't be surprised if A&M is favored in each of its first 5 games.
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
So if you could take care of those things, then there'd be a great opportunity that could possibly be 5-0 with Alabama coming to town, and wouldn't that be fun?
And then having to travel to Tennessee the week after. That's the schedule right there. Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee, those 3 games, especially the Alabama, Tennessee. And I'm not going to sidestep Arkansas because we know what that kind of rivalry has become, and we know how good KJ Jefferson is, and that's been a very exciting series lately. So that is going to be a very good 3 in a row as far as the schedule. It's good that you have the week off after Tennessee because the team will need it. So
and then South Carolina I think comes after that, and
yes,
they beat A&M last year. Of course, a lot of teams did, but yes, that 3-game stretch will likely determine if A&M has a good year or a great year.
Your prediction?
You know, here's the deal. When I look at it and I try to take in who has the most talent and things like that, I keep coming back to 10-2, which means they'll probably go 9-3. Because they're probably going to lose one I don't think they're going to lose. They probably win one that I don't think they're going to win, and then stumble somewhere. But until A&M can show that they can win consistently these big games, I think you have to have a certain amount of doubt and apprehension. But there's not a game on their schedule that I think I look at the opponent they're playing and say, man, that team's just more talented. You know, so maybe the Petrino influence will be great. Maybe Adazio in his second year as offensive coordinator will make that offensive line a lot better. Maybe DJ Durkin in his second year as defensive coordinator will plug some holes. If they can stop the run and get a pass rush, and I can't understand why they can't have a pass rush, that defense only gave up like 21 points a game last year. Well, with a pop gun pass rush, only 4 interceptions all year and couldn't stop the run, and yet gave up 21 points a game. I don't know how they figured that out.
Yeah.
But if they can get 1 touchdown a game, better, right?
That's right. Well, that's how it is. Anytime you see these turnarounds, that's what happens. All of a sudden, you're late in the season, you see a team having a really surprisingly strong year, and then you take a look at last year's schedule and you go, of course, well, it was there all along. Look at all the close games they had, and now they're older. Now they're finishing, and that's how the game is. That doesn't always work out that way, but yeah, if they have a good season, that's exactly what we're going to be able to turn to and go, it was right there in front of us.
Yeah, in 2011, A&M went like 6-7. They lost a bunch of games in the second half. They changed coaches, went into the SEC, went 11-2. Beat Alabama, had a chance to beat LSU and Florida, let those get away. But they went 11-2 and made a huge difference in one year. You know, we saw TCU go from 5-7 to playing for the national championship.
Sure.
We saw Michigan go from in 2012 about to push Harbaugh out the door.
Yep.
And now he's been in the playoff 2 years in a row.
Yes.
You can go all the way back to Auburn. I think they won 3 games in 2012. They played for the national championship in 13. Now, they got a prayer of George and Hare and a kick 6. They got a lot of luck. And I don't know if you can count on that, but you see it's been done.
Yes.
So maybe it's A&M's turn to do that.
Olin, great job as always. I appreciate your time and look forward to, hopefully we'll get a chance to talk at least once or twice during the season.
Well, that'd be great. Well, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it. It's never a bad time to talk about college football, and
No.
Especially Texas A&M.
Thanks,
America
Olin.
starts with A&M.
What was that?
Never forget that America starts with A&M.
Okay, I like the way I'll have to remember that one for sure. That's a good one.
I enjoyed visiting with you.
Thanks, Olin.